Financial education has to start in the home. As our children's first financial teachers, we should have the right knowledge, skills, and tools to build the foundation for our child's financial education. For decades, money has been a taboo topic in the home that just isn't talked about around the kitchen table. Well, today, my guest, Rocky Lalvani, joins me to break down this taboo once and for all. Rocky is the host of the Richer Soul podcast and Profit Answer Man. And today, he's going to demonstrate why teaching our kids early about money and wealth building is one of the greatest investments and legacies any parent can create. My conversation with Rocky starts right now. Hello, my friend. Welcome to this episode of the Dads Making a Difference podcast. My name is Cam Hall. I'm your host and founder of the Dads Making a Difference Mastermind. Today, we're diving into creating positive money mindsets. Such an important tool, important skill for fathers to have. If you want to be a dad making a difference in your family, you need to be able to have a positive money mindset and create and craft positive money mindsets in your children. Well, how do we do that? How do we, and I should stop saying we and start saying I, because I think I have to be very reflective on this. How do I stop looping through these money mindsets that I've created in my own head based on the experiences I've had, whether you've had money or you haven't had money, you want money or you don't want money, you think money's good or you think money's bad. All that is going to impact how your children have a relationship with money and wealth building. And there's no one listening to this right now who has kids who doesn't want their kids wealth building, to be wealthy, to not have to worry and stress about finances. Of course we don't. We want our family to be healthy physically, emotionally, spiritually, and also financially. And so my guest today is Rocky Lalvani. Rocky is a profit first specialist, and he specializes in helping small businesses maximize their business profits. But he's also passionate about educating men and families about creating positive money mindsets. Rocky is going to explain in our conversation today why a lot of people feel like they're struggling financially and really why they are struggling financially. He's going to explain how being present and intentional on money matters with your kids is going to make a huge impact. He's going to outline the biggest problem that we are facing right now when it comes to money. And it's not the lack of it. That is not the problem. And he's going to help you create money stories to examine in your family that you as adults can use if you want to improve your relationship with money and your children's relationship with money. And then, of course, he's going to give you quick tips and outline exact steps that you're going to take right now to start creating a healthy financial feeling and relationship in your home. I'm excited for this conversation. I found so much value out of this conversation with Rocky. I've already listened to this recording multiple times and taken notes. I appreciate Rocky's being here today. So let's get to it. Here is my conversation with Rocky Lalvani. Rocky, it's good to see you. Welcome to the Dads Making a Difference podcast. Glad to have you on.
Happy to be here, Cam. Thank you so much for having me today.
You know, Rocky, to have you here, it's a pleasure because I had an opportunity of meeting you. I think it was about a year and a half ago. We connected for the first time through a mastermind that we're part of. And anytime something comes up where I have a question to the group, to the brotherhood of finance and moving forward, whether it's in personal or in business, I say, hey, well, have you talked to Rocky? so I'm glad to have you on today so we can dive into really financial growth when it comes to being a dad, being a father, and some of the guys who are listening to this are business owners. And so why don't we start, just give us a little bit of your background, who you are, kind of how you grew up and what got you interested in what you do now, just helping people and businesses with their finance.
So I am a husband. My wife and I have been married. I think it's 27 years now. My kids are a bit older. They are 22 and 20. Okay. One is out of the house early and graduated and in married. The other, the 20-year-old is going to graduate this spring, and he's already got his job. So the kids are essentially launched. We're empty nesters, figuring out our next steps. I'm an immigrant to the U.S. I came here when I was a little kid, and when we immigrated, my parents didn't have a lot of money to start over, and that was just because of the way things went from India. But over time, they had success, and I think the biggest thing that I learned as a kid was finances, because the adults would all talk about money, which I just assumed was normal. I didn't realize how few people talk about money. And I think that's why so many people struggle. So for me as a kid, like I was like, I want to be a millionaire. So all I did was, read, learn, try and figure out the systems. And I slowly and methodically did that. And I built my wealth over time. We were very intentional with our kids, because we're like, there's always this balance of, and this is what we learned even growing up. If you give your kids everything, you'll spoil them and they'll blow your money. So it's that balance of making sure you do it correctly so that they can have a nice life. They can have help, but they're not kind of overburdened with that. And so we spent a lot of time doing that as well. And then a lot of my time was just spent early on just helping people with personal finance. And then at some point, I got this aha, and I didn't realize business owners didn't look at their finances. I'm like, how do you run a business and not look at your finances? That's crazy.
Yeah.
And so I kind of switched gears, and now what I do full time is I work with business owners. I help them understand the finances of their business and how to make better and wiser decisions.
That's excellent. You mentioned something that stood out to me. You said lots of things that stood out to me, but that your family talked about money in the home. And we've had that conversation come up before on this podcast, whether guys are talking about finance or talking about a background that they had where that didn't happen, and how somehow this conversation about money in the home was taboo. The kids didn't hear it. It was done behind closed doors. So does that create confusion and frustration about money in the home if that's a conversation that's not done in the open?
Here's the bottom line. I have an MBA. I have a Bachelor of Science in Economics. They don't teach you money in school. So if you're not learning money in school and you're not learning money at home, and you spend the first 21 years of your life going to get educated so you can get a job and make money, but nobody talks about it, how absurd is this?
Yeah, no one's teaching you how to make money, save money, use money.
Yeah. The whole thing is absolutely absurd. And I think that's the biggest problem people face, is that they aren't talking about it, that there are all of these taboos around it. And here's the thing. If you're facing these taboos, your behavior is going to follow that, right? So what you think subconsciously is what you do. So if you think that money is bad, well, then you won't go after it. You won't want it. If you get it, you'll get rid of it, and you'll always struggle financially. If you think living in debt is normal, you'll go into debt without thought and get yourself in trouble.
When does confusion or frustration about money set in? Like when you, sorry, excuse me, when you started, you said you were helping individuals with their finance, and then you moved into a point in your life, you're focusing on businesses. When you were working with individuals, and there's a lot of individual guys listening to this right now, when did you see that confusion or focus or frustration around money start to set in? We're like, I don't know what's going on.
So I think money stories start when you were a very young kid, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. If you think about it and you ask yourself, what are your first memories of money? What was money like in your home? How did you, learn about money? Those things are still rattling around in the back of your mind. Oh, money doesn't grow on trees. We can't buy that. We can't afford that. We don't deserve that. Those people stepped on somebody to get money. All of that is happening in the background when we are children. And if you haven't examined those thoughts, and if you haven't worked on them, then as an adult, you're just naturally doing that. It's going around in the back of your mind unconsciously to you.
And sometimes consciously you hear comments like, well, I never had money growing up, so, or I just don't know how to make money. It doesn't come easy to me. Or
Right.
where do these money mindsets set in? Because I know that one of the things I wanted to chat with you about today and bring up was developing money mindsets. When we start doing it, some implementation tasks or rules to have, but just in
Yeah.
conversations about money. So, can we dive into money mindsets for a second? How do we begin to
Yeah.
develop positive money mindsets in the home?
So I think to begin with, you have to ask yourself, what are your money mindsets? How do you think about money? If I ask you the simple question, money is, what are you going to fill in that blank? Right. And you'll be surprised at the answers. And once you start to do that, now you can ask yourself, is it true?
Right.
And then you can start to say, well, what do I want money to be? Right. If you think money is going to buy you happiness, good luck. It's not. That's the reality of it. At the end of the day, money is a tool. You have to learn to use your tools. If I try and use a hammer to screw in a screw, it ain't going to work.
Right.
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 And that's where I think people struggle. We've not been taught to use money as a tool. There's too much hype around money and excitement. Like, it's funny, at the one side, we all want to be wealthy, and then we hate wealthy people. Like, how do you live with that dichotomy?
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know? So I think the first part is just understanding what your views are, challenging those views, just like any other scripts that are going on in your mind of, are you worthy, or you're not worthy, or you're not good enough? And just challenging them all, re-questioning them, and over time, slowly making steps towards the betterment.
One of the things that I've heard or seen, and honestly, I've experienced this too in my own relationship with my wife. We got married. We're going on 12 years now. We're not quite in the stage of life that you are. Kids are young, 8 and 10. But when we got married, we had very different money mindsets. There were some similarities in our background, but different ways that money was spoken about or dealt with or managed in the home. Um, why is that so important to understand or acknowledge when you're getting married?
Well, I think part of it is, if your spouse is coming from a totally different viewpoint, then you're going to constantly battle because you're looking at the same thing through a totally different lens.
Mm.
And so understanding that, for a lot of women, it's just about security.
Yeah, the
As
security
long
button.
as there's 10 or 20 or 30K in the bank, I feel secure. I just want to know that things are okay, that I can pay for. It depends where you are, right? For some women, it's, can I put food on the table this week?
Mm-hmm.
Can I buy the kids clothes?
Right.
Or is that a problem? And then again, your wife has to examine their money scripts, and the two of you have to come up with, hey, this is how we want to behave together, because otherwise you're constantly fighting. When I was younger, it was just amazing to me where one spouse would go out and buy something stupid, and the other spouse would retaliate by buying something
Something
stupid.
stupid.
And then the third, the other spouse, like, you both were doing stupid. And the next thing you know, you're in 20 grand in debt because you're stupid, because you're not talking to each other. You're arguing with each other.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's acknowledging, you can't judge their scripts, right? This
Yeah.
is what the way they're programmed. And so just being honest and having honest conversations. This is the way I feel about money. How do you feel about money? Is
Yeah.
this the way we want to feel about money going forward?
Yeah. It's interesting. I'm gonna be open and transparent. I always am on this podcast. And Kim and I struggled for a long time with that. Maybe it was that money mindset piece of, we don't talk about money in the home. And then one day it was like, why don't we talk about money in home? This is even before, we didn't have a lot of time before Maya was born. Maya was born a year and a bit into our marriage. But even when we first got married, we had our own bank accounts, and it was just like, okay, and then we'll just pool our money at the end and we'll just pay the bills. And that went on for, 5 or 6 years, where it's like, Kim had her accounts, I had my accounts. She would give this, she'd put in this percentage out of her. And it just became this mess of not really knowing where the money went. And I know that you are like very adamant about give every dollar a job. And if you don't know where the money's going or you don't know where the money's coming from and you have different accounts and it's all over the place, you don't know that. So can you talk to giving every money a job, every dollar a job? I know that's basic, but I think it's always very important to understand.
I think the biggest thing that happens is we live in a consumerism society.
Hmm.
Buy, spend, spend, spend. It's only X. It's only this. And we start mindlessly spending. And I think that's the bigger problem. We spend money on things that don't even bring us joy. I can't tell you how many stories I've heard about one spouse having a closet full of stuff that has never been touched, still with price tags on it.
Wow.
Right? We do. So it's called retail therapy, right? We buy something to make ourselves feel better. That's not being intentional with money. So we don't tell you to live cheap. What we tell you is understand what are the things that you guys love doing. So if you come together and say, we want to travel, okay, we're going to give our travel budget some money and we're going to spend that. But if we're going to spend money on travel, what don't we care about? Maybe you don't care about a fancy car. Maybe you don't care about a big house. Maybe you don't care about, if you look at your bills, how many things and services have you signed up for? If you're not using and watching them, cancel it all. I think it's just about being intentional and then also being intentional with savings. We're all going to face bad times, right? We're all going to face so-called emergencies. Most emergencies are BS, right?
Tell me about that.
I had to get new tires for my car. I didn't expect that. Really? Your tires had 50,000 miles on them. They were bald.
You didn't expect that?
The heat broke. I didn't expect that. Well, the heater was 22 years old.
Yeah.
When you bought your house, the guy told you it's 15 years old. It's going to go, right? You know when the roof is going to go 30 years before the roof goes. So if you're not setting money aside, these aren't emergencies. These are just normal things.
Yeah.
Are we going to have a health crisis? Yeah, we're going to go to the hospital one day for something. A kid's going to break a bone, right? That's life. So be prepared for those types of things. Have a little bit of excess. When you have margin, life is good. When you don't have margin, you fight. And I think that's the thing. Financial stress in the home causes a lot of fights. So sit down and say, hey, if we have X amount of money, where do we want our money to flow? Where is it going to bring us the most joy? And then send it out to do that with intention and don't waste it.
Yeah. You mentioned, money in the home could bring some, negative feelings, negative conversation, sometimes even resentment in the home when a conversation comes up about money. What do you suggest, couples do, guys do to keep a relationship strong through conversations about money?
So believe it or not, a lot of couples have money dates. Like they set aside time once, twice a month to sit down, review the finances, and to have conversations without judgment.
Yeah.
And to understand and listen to what the other person is saying and not to judge it, but just to understand it. And you also have to realize, and this is what other people don't talk about, two people get married. If you look at their parents' background, what does that look like financially? How involved are the parents? How much are they interfering? What are the expectations from the parents to the kids as well? Right. And I'm talking about us as grown adults.
Yeah, right. When it comes to your spouse, you got to keep the wife happy. There is part of that too.
There is, you do. But I think these are where the conversations happen. Okay, what is it that's actually going to make you happy? Because you bought all that stuff and it's still sitting there untouched.
Yeah.
Clearly that didn't make you happy. So let's not do that. What will make you happy? Let's do that.
Yeah. So When, now let's say you've sat with your spouse, you're doing the money dates, and things are going well. You have a picture for what you want every dollar to do. You're automatically saving, like these things are in place. And then you have your kids, and your kids are in their 20s. My kids are not. My kids are 8 and 10. And you start to have conversations even earlier than that, 5, 6 years old, in the home about money, practices around money. How do we start to teach our kids about money and have conversations about money that start to build positive money mindsets?
So my question is very simple. If I gave you a book on golf and you read it, how good a golfer do you think you'd be?
Oh, not good until you practiced quite a bit.
Not
Yeah.
good till you practice quite a bit, right? Same thing happens with money,
Yeah.
right? So essentially, if you want a kid to learn golf, you're going to hand them a club and a ball.
Right.
You want kids to learn about money, you got to hand them money.
Mm. So, some guys will challenge, oh, no, my kid's got to earn money.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Now your kid's got to earn money. Now you're fighting over earning money all the time. What
Right.
money mindsets are you creating?
Hmm.
I'm not telling you they shouldn't earn money. What I'm telling you is a certain base has to be handed to them so they can start to learn to use money. Now, this isn't like, and everyone's going to argue this, everyone's got to do it what's best for you. But let's just say you start with, hey, I'm going to hand my kids a couple bucks a week and they're going to be in charge of money. Now, when we go to Target and they want a candy bar, it's no longer, mommy, I want a candy bar. It's like, son, you have money. If you'd like to buy it, buy it. And then you start to have conversations about, what does a candy bar at the checkout look like versus a candy bar at the back of the supermarket versus a candy bar in a bag at Costco, right? Because each of those have different, like, let's calculate. Can you and your sister or brother pool money and you go buy your favorite candy at Costco for 10 cents on the dollar instead of, full price at the convenience store and double price? But now you're no longer handing them money.
You're
Now they're
educating them.
making choices. Now,
Yeah.
the kid comes to you and says, I want a big XYZ. Okay. Well, how are you going to earn extra money to be able to do that? Let's show you some ways of doing that. Maybe it's chores, at 5, 6, 7, 8, it's
Yeah.
chores around the house. 9, 10, 11, 12, maybe it's showing them, hey, let's go to a yard sale.
Yeah.
You go up and you negotiate and you buy some of this stuff that you think has value for another kid. And then you go sell it to another kid for twice as much money. And now you're starting to make a buck. Or maybe you buy something and you put a little effort into fixing it or repairing it or doing something. I mean, today, even on the internet, like, what can you do to earn a few extra dollars? So now we're not creating negative money mindsets, but we're also showing them expansive. If you want more, here's how you get more than what you just have. And here are some ways to do it. And that also creates mother-father bonding time with the kids because you're working together to do something. And, they appreciate it because you're helping them achieve their goals instead of demanding what your goals are on them.
And I love that you said it's mother, father, and kids working together, because sometimes the conversation will be, we can't afford that. We don't have money for that. Instead of, that's a good idea. Let's work towards that.
Mhm.
Right. Oh, you want to go here? Let's work towards that.
And I think that's a big thing, is teaching them how to work towards that. There's a lot of ways to do that. I mean, and again, a lot of this depends on where you live, what the opportunities are, and what they can do. I mean, when we were kids, we would sell greeting cards door to door, right? That's what we did. There's always a way to make a buck, whether it's buying the bag of Costco candy at Costco and selling it out of your locker at school, right? Or something else.
Yeah, I love my kids have seen opportunity in our environment. It snows lots here. So my son will be like, I'm going to go shovel walks. And it's kind of funny to see because he's always been a kid of service. I can see that in his heart. He loves to help people. He's always been a helper, wants to do things. And he went outside. He comes back and he's like, I shoveled, and he's naming all the neighbors. I shoveled all their walks. That's great, man. How much money did you earn? Oh, I just did it.
Hey, and that's nice. There's nothing wrong. Did they know that he did it?
Oh, he just went, he did it, and he left. And I'm okay. So then I got to the point where he was uncomfortable asking. So I got to go over, and we know the neighbors well. And he shoveled and then said, Braylon has a question for you, And so he's set up a program with the neighbors that they pay him monthly, and he'll do it. So it's good.
Well, and it's so you're teaching the kid to talk to an adult. You're teaching skills far beyond. But it's, hey, before you shovel their walk, go up and knock on the door. Say, would you like me to shovel your walk, and come up with a price? Now, at the same point, you can say, okay, there's 5 neighbors here. One of them is an elderly woman living on a fixed income.
Yeah.
Well, why don't you go to the other 4 and say, hey, can I shovel your walk? By the way, I'd like to shovel her walk. Would you pitch in to help out? And I'll take care of her too.
Yeah, that's excellent. I love that.
And so you got to be outside the box, and you got to teach values, and you have to teach giving back. I don't have a problem with, you got to teach kids how to give too.
Yeah. And I agree. It's so funny to see them work through that. Right. And I wondered where that came from. I asked Braylon, I was like, are you nervous about asking to earn money? Or are you nervous about just talking to the adult at the door? And I was waiting to see where that went. He said, no, I'm just nervous to knock on the door. I'm like, oh, okay, that changes. Because then once the door is open, he's talking like a mile a minute. The same thing, my kids have this thing called the poo patrol, Paw patrol, because when it snows and then it melts and everybody's let their dog in the backyard, now it's melt, there's a whole bunch of mess and nobody really likes to clean that up. So my kids do the poo patrol and they go around, they do that. And it's just this idea of it's okay to go out there, earn money, negotiate a price, and like you said, also serve people when you can serve people. That kind of leads me to a short question here. I mentioned to you when we did a pre-call, my kids have jars, give, save, spend jars. What other practices, have you seen that have worked for families to start to create positive mindsets about money? And the jar system is one of them.
We essentially use the same thing. We used an envelope system instead of a jar system.
Yeah.
And so the big thing is to save. And I think people put too small a percentage to save. So we told our kids, they had an allowance of $6, $7, $8 a week. It's like, okay, $1 goes to give, and then what's left gets split 50-50 save spend. And the save is not for the short term. The save is for a time beyond your comprehension, like beyond a car, beyond car. We just taught them to think decades in advance. So I think that's a big give, save, spend. That 3 system works really, really well. With the saving side, then comes teaching investing.
Yeah, and I was going to ask you about that.
Right? How do you teach investing? How do you show them how to make it grow? And a lot of parents will even say, okay, you start saving, and what I'm going to do is for everything you save, we're actually going to bonus you on top of that so that you help boost their savings. And you'd be shocked at how fast money grows for kids. I mean, for us adults, it's not a ton, but for the kids, it's rapidly growing. And when they have their own spend, it's like, hey, if you want to buy something. Like, why are you bugging me?
Right.
Now they learn to negotiate.
Yeah. I started paying my kids interest on their savings. So every month, if like, here's your savings, here's what you've had, it stays there. This is what you earn by just keeping it there.
And you can open up a bank account and go to the bank and show them how banks work, and then show them how investment work.
Yeah. Excellent. You had a story about, the penny doubling story, right? That to show that power of compounding. Would you mind sharing that? Because I think there's a couple of guys on here who might not have heard that before.
So, it's all a question of how you want to tell the story and how you want to do the story. But at the end of the day, it's about the power of a penny doubling. And since we're kind of talking with kids. Let's talk about kids, right? So Jeannie comes and Jeannie says to you, I'm granting you this wish,
Yeah.
right? I'm gonna give you money. And I'm going to give you money in one of two ways. Right? Either I'm going to give you a penny today, and every day for the next 32 days, I'll double it and give you more. So on day one, I'll give you 1 cent. On day two, I'll give you 2 cents. On day three, I'll give you 4 cents. On day four, I'll give you 8 cents. Or I'll give you $100,000 a day for 32 days. Which one do you want?
Yeah.
Right. And everyone intuitively says, okay, I want the penny doubling, but they don't know how much it is. Yeah. And the reality is the penny doubling adds up to $22 million, roughly.
Wow.
Over time. And that's the key. And if you compound it and own it, because, yeah, if you actually do it where it's not just doubling, but every day you're getting the double plus the original, it turns into about $43 million.
Wow.
But here's the thing, and this is what people don't realize. The majority of that money comes in the last couple days. So let's just say you have $22 million on day 32. On day 31, you had 11 million. On day 30, you had 5.5 million. On day 29, you had 27.5 million. So the key here is if you give up days 1 through 5 with the little bits of pennies, you're not going to get to day 32. You're literally going to give up $20 million because you didn't start, because you didn't begin at the beginning. And that's what I think people don't understand. That the cost of delaying starting is the end part, and that's where the biggest things are. Now, look, no genie's coming to you and doing this, right? Yeah. I understand that. But let's just say you're 22 years old and you delay from 22 to 27 or 29. You've essentially given up your last double. So if you calculated it out and said, okay, when I retire at 65, I'm going to have $1 million. Well, you actually gave up $1 million because you could have had that last double. Right. It could have been 2 million. And that's the reality of it. So starting saving early is extremely important. Yeah. And then just creating that habit and consistently doing it without thinking and just automating it is how that works. Because life is going to happen, right? We're going to get busy. We're going to have kids. We're going to get married. The school bills are going to come. This bill's going to come. But if in the background, your money is constantly being automatically saved and invested, and you're growing the amount as you grow in income, so it's not a set dollar amount. It's not that, okay, I do $100. Maybe I do 10% of my income. And maybe next year I do 11% of my income. And the following year, 12% of my income. Well, two things are happening. Your saving percentage is going up. And if your income is going up, then you're automatically putting more and more money away.
Right. Right. You mentioned something there, education costs. I just want to talk about that real quick because, my background in education, you and I both have, multiple university college degrees. We've gone to them. But talk about university and schooling and college, because I know you have, we view this very similarly.
Honestly, I in today's world, I think college is a joke. I don't think your kids are going to learn very much. Now, people say, oh, it was an experience. Okay, I'll agree with you. It is a learning experience. But at $50,000 a year, or $200,000, that's a hell of an experience, right? I would much rather hand a kid $200,000 and say, start a business. Than to say, spend $200,000 to get a degree in how to run a business, and none of them even know how.
Right.
Because if they did, they wouldn't be in college.
Because they read it through a book and didn't get the practice.
Yeah. They would have written a book and they'd be millionaires, or they'd be faking it and standing in front of jets and fancy cars.
Yeah.
Here's the bottom line. Today, education is available everywhere. You can take free courses from Harvard and Yale on the internet. You can get the information. The piece of paper is only valuable in certain areas. So people say, well, you can't be a doctor without getting a medical degree. I agree with you. You cannot be a doctor without getting a medical degree. But if you want to help people be healthy, doctor isn't going to do that. Doctors help sick people. They don't actually help people to be healthy and spend time focusing on how to be super healthy. They spend time on how to solve your problems with pills. Engineering, you need a degree. Computer science, you don't need a degree. You need to learn how to code. There's so many coding camps. Your kids can get out of school and do that. Now, I will admit, my kids did go to college. I did my best to say, are you sure you really want to do this? We told them we would never pay for Ivy League. My son is graduating at 20 with an engineering degree. He took a bunch of courses in high school so that he could get through the system faster. He is coming out with a very high-paying job, but he was very intentional in how to do that. My daughter got a ton of scholarships. They were very intentional in picking schools based on value and what they wanted to do, learn, and experience. And so it's more than just, hey, they've got a great basketball team, or, hey, that looks like a fun campus. Like, you really have to put a lot of thought and intention. And, $200,000 is probably cheap these days for college, depending on where you're going. And like, I see people, my son's at a state school, and there's people coming in from out of state to go to this school. I'm like, why? Like, why are you paying overpriced tuition to be here? Like, I just don't get it. Most of the stuff he had to learn, he learned on his own, not because of college. You learn how to grow up and do these things. And I think the future of college is changing. And there is a whole lot of change coming on. I had the chancellor of Minerva University on my podcast, and he's an Ivy League graduate. And he's like, Ivy Leagues don't teach you how to learn. They don't, like, it's not the purpose of what they're doing.
Right.
They're creating a whole different kind of learning environment, a whole different kind of college, a whole different kind of experience. The world has changed. School hasn't. And that's the problem. And that, like, the biggest thing that's happening right now, schools are all freaking out because kids can get on the internet, use Chat GBT.
AI is amazing.
AI, hand in their homework. The other one is Chegg. Like, you can go on Chegg, pull your math homework and turn it in. Like, kids aren't doing the work anymore. They're copying the information and turning it in because it's so useless.
Because it's
and if you don't know your kids are doing that, first of all, there's one thing. If your kid's not doing that, then it's foolish of him not to do that. Right? So now you have this whole dilemma. Then what are you wasting your day with?
It's interesting because, Rocky, I'm a vice principal of a high school. So when someone brought up Chat GPT, it was a couple of weeks before the holiday break, in a situation where some people were just like, what? How do we? And I think there's a handful, one or two, who said, how do we stop kids from using this? I'm like, how are you going to stop kids from using the internet? Like, that's the same thing here. AI is incredible and opens up just all these opportunities. And we had one teacher who teaches at the 30 level, grade 12 English, university prep, high academic class. And she just looked at it like, this is incredible. Let's dive in. Let's look at this through the lens of, so how do we use it to be more efficient? How do we use it so that we can start being more in tune with what's machine generated versus human felt and human literature? And it was really, really cool to see. But if you're not, like, if you are listening to this and you're like, what are Cam and Rocky talking about with AI and Chat GPT, you need to go check this out. The AI technology, I think in the next 12 months is going to be incredible.
It is. The world is changing rapidly. And so this is the same thing. When my son was in high school, he was on a robotics team. And so he'd be like ninth grade, and we'd walk into a university engineering department, and they're like, "We got 3D printers." He's like, "Yeah, so do I." Right? Because we could move faster than the university.
Yeah.
He's looking at the stuff they're playing with. He's like, really? Like,
Yeah.
we're over here. Like, if you get out into the real world, who cares when World War I started and end and the reason for it? I can Google that. Now
Right.
the question is can I discern from my Google what's relevant, what's not relevant, what's important? How does it apply to today? That's critical thinking.
Yes.
We're not teaching critical thinking. We're teaching how to regurgitate facts, which, like, Google solved that.
Yeah.
We need to move on.
Yeah. And I don't want to get off on a tangent, but I think it's so interesting. And there's probably guys listening to this. Wow, I wonder what's the AI generator that can help me make a budget. So,
well, you can.
Yeah,
you probably can find. You can probably find something that actually there are more and more tools coming out, but it'll look at your past spending. You can get tools that will look at your past spending, show you where your money's going. And then at that point, it's not about a budget, because budgets like diets suck, right?
Yeah.
You should know that.
Yeah. I do know that.
Right. So all I want you to do is look at where your money's going and ask yourself, do you like where your money's going? Yes or no? And if you don't like it, stop sending it there and sending it to where you like it.
I agree. I love it. Rocky, thank you for coming on. And we're up against it, but I appreciate you spending time with us today, man. There's so much in the last 40 or so minutes that you've shared that I think is gonna, if guys just stop and implement like a couple of the tips or think about some of the points that you've brought up, it can transform really the trajectory in their home when it comes to money and money mindset. So I appreciate you.
That is our hope, that they will go and do that.
All right, Rocky, what is one area right now as a dad or as a husband that maybe you're excited about growing in? You mentioned, at a stage of life now, you're empty nesters.
We are. Honestly, I'm spending a lot more time, I think, in the area of spirituality and just understanding how we as humans behave and understanding how I behave and what's really important. As you get older, you start to see mortality.
Yes.
Now, what's the meaning of life? So that's a big part of, I think, where I'm going these days.
Yeah, cool. Rocky, if somebody wants to connect with you, learn more about what you're doing, where can they find you, track you down, or connect with you?
So before you all do that, would you all do me a favor? If you like this show, would you hit like on the podcast, whatever you're listening, leave a review, share it with a buddy, say, hey, this was a really cool show. Cam's doing wonderful stuff. You should listen to this, and let's go have a beer and talk about it. So do that. After that, you want to come find me. I have 2 podcasts, one where we talk about life, like these different areas. We talk about raising kids, building wealth, living the ultimate life. That one's called Richer Soul. And then for those of you who are business owners, we teach all the business finance on Profit Answer Man. So either of those places you can find me.
Excellent. Rocky, thank you. Appreciate you, brother.
Thank you.